Welcome to the deep dive. Picture this, a world steeped in shadow, where the veil between realities is, well, thin, and the howling of demons echoes across these blood-soaked battlefields.
Yeah, it's the old world of Warhammer, a land where sorcery, it twists the very fabric of existence and death. Death is often just a really gruesome beginning, not the end.
But, amidst all this unending darkness, courage flares up, heroes rise, their blades clash against, well, frankly, impossible odds.
And their deeds become legends, right? Whispered in those rare, quiet moments.
Exactly, and at the heart of this struggle, you have the Empire. It's this sprawling realm, a mix of innovation and tradition, mighty armies, arcane secrets.
All under the watchful eye of Emperor Karl Franz. He's a descendant of Sigmar, the god hero himself.
But the Emperor's domain is, let's just say, under pressure from all sides.
Oh, absolutely. From the World's Edge Mountains, you've got the orc hordes rumbling like constant thunder.
Then down south, the border princes. Lawless, bandits, desperate men carving out territory, brutal stuff.
And don't forget, underneath it all, the Skaven. That chittering menace spreading out from the undercities, the swamps. Their influence is just insidious.
And of course, the big one. From the north, the frozen wastes, chaos. His power just crackles in the air, corrupting everything. Demons, warped followers, always pushing to spill into the mortal realm.
So in times like these, the Empire desperately needs saviors. People who can actually stand against the night.
And it's right into this perilous time that C.L. Werner throws us in his novel, Runefang.
Yeah, it's a fantastic book.
So today, on the deep dive, we're not just, giving you a book report. We're going deep. We're dissecting this narrative, getting into the plot, the character.
Exploring the lore, too, right? The Warhammer setting it lives in.
Absolutely. Pinpointing those key moments, the turning points, and really digging into the themes that resonate through the whole story.
And the title itself, Runefang, tells you a lot. Because right at the core of this story are the Runefangs themselves.
These aren't just fancy swords, are they?
No, not at all. In Warhammer lore, Runefangs are ancient artifacts. They're imbued with really formidable magic. Often they carry the weight of an entire province's destiny on their enchanted steel.
Wow. Okay, so understanding what a Runefang is within the Empire seems pretty crucial for this deep dive.
Definitely paramount. It sets the stage for everything that happens.
Okay, let's unpack this then. The story kicks off, plunging us straight into Wissenland, a vital province of the Empire.
Right, but it's not the Wissenland you might expect. There's this shadow hanging over it, an undead army.
An undead army, okay.
Right.
But you mentioned it's different, not just like shambling zombies.
Exactly. That's what's immediately striking.
Yeah.
These aren't your typical chaotic undead hordes. Werner paints this picture of, a deathly legion that marches with this chilling purpose. It's coordinated.
Coordinated undead. That sounds unsettling.
It is. They adhere to this grim discipline, advancing in ordered ranks, usually under cover of darkness, leaving devastation behind them.
And they set up camps.
Yeah, and not just messy camps. When dawn breaks, they establish these really formidable encampments. Fortified positions, earthen barriers, hidden trenches, sharpened stakes, even well-designed gates for quick deployments.
So, strategic undead. This isn't mindless animation.
Not at all. It's a calculated military threat, and that immediately throws a wrench into the Empire's usual way of doing things.
Right, because how do you handle that? General Hawk, he's this veteran commander, right? He hesitates.
He does. A direct siege seems pointless. How do you starve out an enemy that doesn't need to eat?
Good point. And the knights, the elite orders like the Knights of the Southern Sword, their strength is the charge, isn't it?
Precisely. A devastating cavalry charge.
Okay.
That's useless against entrenched fortifications like these. It highlights the Empire's vulnerability when facing something, well, unconventional.
And these knights, they sound impressive. The flower of Wissenland's nobility, you said.
Oh, absolutely. Imagine the sight. Their Hashmeister Armin, he's observing their destriers. These aren't just horses, they're exceptionally powerful war horses, some 17 hands high.
Huge.
Massive, heavy steel barding, looking like part of the course itself. There are even whispers of Bretonnian courser blood in them. Unmatched power and grace.
So these are the mounts carrying heavily armored knights into the thick of battle. Speaks to the Empire's reliance on tradition, maybe. That visual power.
Definitely. But even these knights, these paragons, are about to face something horrifying. Something that shatters their expectations.
The battle begins. The Wissenland forces finally clash with this undead host.
And initially it looks okay. You hear about the dwarf cannons firing chain shot.
Chain shot? What's that?
Basically, iron balls linked by heavy chains. They just tear through ranks. Gruesome, but effective against the initial wave of undead.
So, a glimmer of hope.
A brief one. The Knights of the Southern Sword smash into that first line of skeletons. Shattering bone, impaling decayed flesh, they punch right through.
Seems successful then.
It seems like it, but that first wave looks almost disorganized. And Armin, the Hawkmeister, he realizes something's wrong. There are these deliberate gaps, open spaces in the undead formation.
Strange, like it's intentional.
Exactly, it's unsettling. A flicker of alarm hits Armin, but it's too late. The charge has too much momentum.
Oh.
Yeah. They break through the first wave only to slam headlong into a second line. And these guys are different.
How so?
They're heavily armored, rusted iron breastplates, heavy iron helms, much tougher than the first wave. It's a trap, basically.
A grim awakening for the knights. Shows the enemy's cunning, not just brute force.
Precisely. And Armin himself becomes this tragic example. The battle turns into a nightmare, clashing steel, splintering bone, he's losing blood, vision blurring.
He sees his knights falling around him.
Broken, lifeless forms everywhere. And in his last moments, as he's fading, he sees two figures against the sun.
Yeah.
A skeleton warrior with a bronze-tipped spear. And even more disturbing, a hooded figure. Cloaked in black scaled armor, glowing amber eyes, clutching a bladed staff.
A necromancer. Or something worse.
Likely. A necromancer, maybe a chaos sorcerer. Someone powerful orchestrating this whole thing. Armin's final terror really underscores the malevolence they're facing. His death isn't just losing a leader, it's the failure of their old ways.
A really dark opening. So from this disaster, the story shifts focus.
It does. We meet Baron von Rabold.
Tell me about him. He sounds important.
He cuts a striking figure. Tall, lean, silver-chased breastplate with his raven symbol, blue cape flowing, rubies on his gloves. Very aristocratic.
Got it. A nobleman facing this extraordinary crisis.
Right. And then there's his companion, a complete contrast.
Oh.
A hulking brute of a man, chainmail, dented steel breastplate, grim scarred face, frosty blue eyes, always frowning, thick beard.
Sounds intimidating.
Then he carries this enormous sword. The blade looks like a steel lightning bolt, apparently, with a grinning steel skull on the pommel.
Just raw power personified, next to the refined baron.
Exactly. An unnamed force of nature at this point. Their pairing suggests different strengths, maybe different approaches.
And there's someone else too. An ogre.
Yeah, an immense ogre. Dwarfs, even the tallest soldiers. Iron-shod boots like beer barrels, legs like tree trunks, a dented shield used as a belt buckle, and his sword hilt looks like a wagon yoke.
A nobleman, a brute, and an ogre. That's quite the team. Hints at desperation, maybe.
Could be. Desperate times, unlikely alliances. Their journey takes them to Koblitz.
What's Koblitz like?
It's seen better days. The tavern, the mare and mule, used to be a busy spot on the trade route between Wissenberg and Averheim. Now, dilapidated, crumbling.
By the decline.
That road's become dangerous.
Yeah.
Bandits have taken over. It's partly because of the tension, the feud between Wissenland and the neighboring province, Averland. Broken trade routes hurt towns like Koblitz.
So internal squabbles are making things worse. Typical empire, maybe?
It certainly weakens their resilience,
Yeah.
and this rundown tavern is where they find the remnants of a mercenary company, the Brotherhood of Schwarstetten.
Mercenaries. Hardened fighters.
Very grizzled veterans, but even they are shaken by what they've faced. Fighting these undead, it's different. They talk about abandoning wounded comrades because the skeletons, they just kept hacking and stabbing until every last flicker of life was gone. No mercy, no humanity, it haunts them.
I can imagine. That kind of fighting takes a psychological toll.
Definitely. Their captain, Waldner, he voices this. They don't want to fight these things anymore. They feel guilt, self-loathing for surviving when others didn't. It raises questions about a soldier's duty against such an enemy.
But they can't just leave, can they?
Well, they try. Waldner tells General Hawk they're leaving as soon as Baron von Rabold gets back.
And Hawk? How does he react?
Not well. Ruthless efficiency. Accuses them of cowardice, threatens them, even has his soldiers physically restrain one of the defiant mercenaries, Robin.
Harsh. Shows the desperation of the command, doesn't it?
It does. And Waldner's lieutenant, Ernst, he's caught in the middle, torn between loyalty to his men and the Empire's needs. He wanted to persuade them to stay, but Hawk's tactics.
Leave no room for diplomacy.
None. Hawk basically sees them as expendable tools. Their fears, their desires, irrelevant. It's the brutal calculus of survival in the old world.
As if things weren't tense enough, then the priests of Mor show up.
Exactly. Talk about dramatic timing. These somber guys, servants of the god of death, black robes, raven symbols, a hunched old man like a vulture, a tall hooded figure, and a massive warrior in black steel armor.
Their arrival probably didn't lighten the mood.
Not at all. Shock, hostility. Some people even making protective signs. Peter Grable, the high priest of Vermidia, the war goddess, he's outraged. Views them with deep suspicion.
But Count Eberfeld, the ruler of Wissenland, he defends them.
He does. He's more pragmatic, argues that maybe people who study death understand the undead better. It sets up this conflict, doesn't it? Traditional military thinking versus something more mystical.
And it's during this debate that a dwarf speaks up, Skinir.
Yes, Skinir. And he druffs some crucial history, talks about ancient battles against Nagash, the great necromancer himself.
Nagash? Even I've heard that name. Big deal in Warhammer lore.
Huge. And Skinir talks about Nagash's lieutenant, Zahaak. How Zahaak invaded the Empire from the west ages ago, trying to trap Sigmar's forces between two undead armies.
So this Zahaak, the current enemy, he's been around before.
Apparently. Skinir reveals Zahaak's plan was stopped back then, not by the main Imperial army, but by the mountain folk, the dwarfs. They fought him fiercely in the passes.
Ah, so there's a history there. Dwarfs versus undead.
A long and bloody one, Skinir suggests, predating the current crisis by millennia. He even mentions rumors about Nagashizzar, Nagash's supposedly destroyed fortress, lights being seen there. Fears Nagash might be returning.
That adds a whole new layer of dread. This isn't just some random undead uprising.
Not at all. It feels cyclical. Ancient threats returning.
And this ancient conflict, Zahaak's first invasion, Skinir mentioned how he was stopped. Was a Runefang involved?
That's the critical question raised. Skinir floats a compelling idea. Maybe Alaric the Mad?
The legendary dwarf runesmith? Eccentric, powerful.
That's the one. Maybe Alaric gave a Runefang to the dwarf king of Karagdar, a stronghold in the mountains, specifically to help fight Zahaak.
A lost Runefang hidden in the mountains, holding the key.
That's the hope. Count Eberfeld latches onto this, a weapon of legend to fight this legendary evil.
So he gives Baron von Robwald a mission.
Exactly, a perilous, vital mission. Venture into the treacherous Black Mountains, find this lost Runefang, and hopefully find a way to stop Zahaak.
Sends the Baron and his unique companions into danger.
Right into the heart of it. But amidst all this high-stakes stuff, we get a bit of contrast.
Oh, yeah.
We meet Theodo, a halfling, and his huge ogre companion, Grum.
Halflings and ogres. Another unlikely pair.
Very. Theodo's a quick-witted gambler, always getting into trouble. Grum is the muscle, fiercely loyal, if maybe a bit simple. Theodo uses his street smarts, exploits the tall folk, as he calls them, to survive. Even prosper sometimes.
Adds a bit of levity.
Definitely needed. Their dynamic is quite endearing, actually. Theodo gets exasperated with Grum gets sheepish. There's a real tenderness there.
Like when Theodo offers to cook for him.
Yeah, Kulgrik. A pungent dwarfish stew instantly cheers the ogre up, shows their bond. Even in dark times, you find these connections.
So back to the Baron's mission. He gathers his force.
A small, diverse group, his own knights, some mercenaries, and a mysterious figure called the Crone of Mor, Karlinda.
The Crone of Mor. Sounds ominous.
She is. And Ernst, Voldner's lieutenant, he feels uneasy about the whole mission, a sense of foreboding as they prepare to leave Koblitz.
Tell me more about Karlinda the Crone.
She's fascinating. Not like the trained priests of Mor. Her connection to the god of death is more innate, a raw gift. She perceives whispers, gray shapes of the dead.
So the veil between worlds is thin for her.
Extremely thin, almost non-existent sometimes. It scares her, and the other priests are suspicious of her. Even during their rituals, she feels this unseen menace, like something dark is drawn to her sensitivity.
And this menace doesn't manifest.
Terrifyingly so. The priests of Mor perform a ritual, ascending, to get info on the undead. It goes horribly wrong.
How?
A shadow appears, coalesces into this huge skull shape, full of writhing, shadowy worms in its sockets. The priests freak out.
Yikes.
But then, a figure in gleaming black armor steps in.
Ah.
A black guardsman. A Templar from some holy order, he intervenes.
A hidden protector. Against forces even the death priests fear.
Seems like it. He fights desperately to protect Karlinda from these shadow worms. Total commitment to duty, victory, or death. His selfless courage shows there are still bastions against the dark in the Empire.
And after this chaos, we learn the real mission objective.
Yes, General Hawk talks privately with Ekdal, a scout, reveals they're not just looking for Runefang, they're after the lost Runefang of Solent.
Solent, wasn't that province destroyed long ago?
Exactly. And this specific information, Hawk says, came from Karlinda the Crone. She's had visions not just of a necromancer, but of one of the ancient Dark Lords of Nagash stirring.
A Dark Lord that's significantly worse.
Immensely worse. Beings of ancient, terrifying power. It changes the stakes completely. This isn't just a regional threat anymore, it's potentially an existential crisis for the whole empire.
So the Runefang of Solent becomes their only hope against an enemy of unimaginable power.
Pretty much. It underscores how much might rest on these forgotten magical artifacts.
So the Baron's expedition finally sets off from Koblitz, heading for the Black Mountains, Karagdar.
Right, and as they travel, we learn more about Karlinda's past, the tragedy at Graeber's farm.
What happened there?
Graeber's 3 infants were stillborn, umbilical cords wrapped around their necks. Horrific. And local folklore somehow links this to Karlinda being there.
They blame her.
They believe she's marked as the bride of Mor, connected to death. It inspires fear, suspicion among the superstitious locals, gives her this tragic backstory.
So she's burdened by personal tragedy, misunderstood, feared. Adds complexity to her character.
Absolutely. She's an outsider, even among Mor's servants. Highlights the irrationality of fear in this world.
And during the journey, there's an incident with a mule.
Yeah, a mule panics, spooks Karlinda's horse. She's about to be thrown.
But someone saves her.
Kessler, the Baron's scarred champion. He reacts incredibly fast, surprisingly gentle, throws himself at the horse to stop it.
Kessler. He's the big guy with the scars, right? From goblin torture.
That's him, horribly disfigured face. But Karlinda doesn't recoil. She looks at him with a strange, almost sorrowful light in her eyes.
A connection forming between these two isolated, suffering people.
It seems like it. He expects fear, disgust. She shows empathy, maybe recognizes a kindred spirit, hints at the depth hidden beneath his scars, and her sensitivity.
And Kessler stays vigilant. He spots something later.
He does. A pile of stones arranged like a hunter's sign, a marker. Ekdal, the scout, dismisses it.
But Kessler doesn't.
No, he's cautious. Hand drifts to his sword hilt. Feels like they're being watched. Or followed.
And this suspicion. It's confirmed.
Tragically, yes. They reach Mersklein, a desolate village, eerily silent.
Something's wrong.
Very wrong. They find the villagers massacred. Men, women, children. Brutal. Looks like goblin work. The stench of death is overwhelming.
Just a constant reminder of the danger everywhere.
Exactly. And Skanir, the dwarf, warns them, don't engage any goblins left. They're cowardly, but vicious and cunning when they have the advantage.
Good advice. Do they get out cleanly?
They try. But suddenly, arrows fly from hiding. One soldier goes down instantly, forces them into a hasty, messy retreat.
Ambushed again.
And it gets worse. A monstrous mutant, warped by dark magic, bursts out of a building, then more coordinated attack. In the chaos, Kessler gets hit hard on the head, knocked out cold.
Kessler down. That's
Yeah.
bad. Leaves him vulnerable.
Very vulnerable. And while he's out, we see another ugly side of this world. Bandits show up.
In Mersklein, what are they doing?
Scavenging, looting the dead humans and goblins alike. Their leader, Rambrecht, is talking secretly with another bandit, Baldur.
A deal. Planning something.
Seems like it. Whispers about a planned attack. Strongly suggests there's a traitor and informant inside the Baron's own group.
Internal treachery, too. This quest is just layers of danger.
Exactly. And while this is happening in the mountains, devastating news reaches Count Eberfeld back in Wissenland.
What now?
Hefirth has fallen, swiftly, catastrophically, to Zahaak's undead.
But Hefirth had strong walls, right? And no siege weapons were used.
None apparent. Overrun in a single night. It fills Eberfeld with dread, raises serious questions about Zahaak's real power. Are there unseen forces at play? Infiltration? Magic?
A major blow. Shows conventional defenses might be useless.
Utterly. And Eberfeld is facing this horrible dilemma. He needs to stop Zahaak, but he also needs to protect his lands from, well, from Averland.
His old rivals.
Yeah.
Taking advantage.
He fears it, even as fresh troops arrive, eager but inexperienced compared to the grim veterans he's stretched thin.
And his fears about Averland are confirmed.
Yes. An exhausted river guard arrives. News from Count Kim of Averland himself. Averland is massing troops on the border.
Oh no, the old feud is about to explode. Right when they need unity.
Looks that way. Remember, Eberfeld's father overthrew the previous rulers, the von Strelitz family, and Averland opposed it back then. Bad blood runs deep. It threatens to cause conflict at the worst possible time.
A classic Warhammer problem.
Yeah,
The Empire fighting itself while the real enemy advances.
pretty much. Meanwhile, back with the Barons group, more trouble. A supply wagon breaks down, slows them down even more.
And the Black Guardsman Templar is dead, right?
Yes, he died fighting the Sending. So Kessler, the scarred champion, he takes over as Karlinda's bodyguard.
Bringing them closer together.
It seems so. Shared hardship, vulnerability. Kessler thinks about his scars, notices Karlinda doesn't react with fear, but with that quiet sorrow. An unspoken understanding seems to be forming. Pain, isolation, forging a bond.
It's a really human element amidst all the horror.
It is. Kessler, used to brutality and disgust, finds unexpected acceptance. Karlinda, used to fear and isolation, finds quiet companionship. Shows that even in the worst times, these connections can happen.
And there's a lighter moment, with Skynir and Theodo.
A brief one, yeah. Skynir wakes up smelling something familiar. Finds himself in Theodo's cook cart.
What's Theodo cooking?
Kuldrick again. That pungent dwarf stew. The halfling's skill actually earns Skynir's grudging respect. A small moment, but it shows connections across cultures.
But the dangers return quickly, I assume?
Always. They spot orc scouts. Baron von Robbald is smart, though. Avoids a fight.
Why?
Their mission is too important. A fight with orcs would be bloody, time-consuming, a dangerous distraction from finding the Runefang, strategic thinking.
But trouble finds them anyway. Ambushed again.
Yes, likely the same bandits. Narrow pass, brutal attack, Otmar and others are killed.
What about Kessler?
He fights his way out, a desperate escape, just trying to reach the Baron and warn him.
The Baron's group gets hit too.
They do. Ernst is wounded. But Skynir and Grum intervene, drive off the first wave.
And Karlina feels something. The Sending.
Yes, she senses its return, radiating dread. The bandits are terrified by this unseen force and flee. Shows her connection is a double-edged sword useful, but attracts darkness.
And Theodo. Ever the opportunist.
Finds that goatskin pouch the bandits were fighting over, the one with the weird symbols. His mind immediately starts scheming how to profit from it. Survival instinct, I guess.
While all that's happening, back in civilization, Eberfeld meets with Everland's envoys.
A tense meeting in Bergdorf. The Averlanders arrive in force. Seneschal Kuhlmann, Lord Hugo von Reinhold of the Knights of the Griffin, banners, troops, a clear show of strength.
Puts Eberfeld on edge.
Definitely. They offer aid, supplies, but Eberfeld is deeply suspicious of Count Achim's motives. That old feud hangs heavy. And the Knights of the Griffin being there, they're linked to Reichland. Eberfeld worries about outside influence.
More political maneuvering.
And the Averlanders twist the knife slightly. They present their Runefang, Mother's Ruin.
Showing it off.
Pretty much. Highlights the importance of these artifacts, but also subtly contrasts it with Wissenland's lost Runefang, a power play. Underscores the link between Runefang's prestige and provincial power.
And we learn more about the feud. Eberfeld's family overthrowing the von Sturlitz, Everland opposing it.
Exactly. Generations of resentment. Now undermining any chance of a united front against the undead.
But Lord Hugo tries to mediate. Pleads for unity.
He does. Seems like a man of integrity. Urges Eberfeld to put the feud aside, invoking Sigmar's example of uniting the tribes. Says only unity can save them now.
Does Eberfeld listen?
He remains wary. Refuses direct military aid from Averland. Doesn't trust Achim, fears instability from foreign troops.
But he needs supplies.
Desperately, so he accepts the food. And as a compromise, maybe a test, he invites Achim to send a small delegation, led by Achim himself, to witness the undead threat firsthand. Cautious, balancing need and politics.
Meanwhile, the Barons group reaches another town, Furchtstadt.
Yes, and again, not a warm welcome. Locals are wary, suspicious. Eugen, the proud knight, he's dismissive, thinks the town lacks strong fighters, just more fear and distrust everywhere.
And Theodo suspects a spy again.
He does, notices nervous behavior, voices his suspicion, doesn't name anyone, but Eugen, the hothead knight, loses it, attacks the halfling.
Grum steps in.
Instantly. Protects Theodo, stops Eugen from hurting him badly, but it just fractures the group even more.
And there's more shadiness. The innkeeper.
Yeah, no, nervous guy. Turns out he's secretly agreed to deliver a letter for gold. Fearful of someone. Indicates other parties are interested in the Baron's quest, maybe working against them. Hidden agendas abound.
So they finally reach the Black Mountains proper.
They do. Kessler's struck by the majesty, the power of the landscape. Skynir explains the history ancient battles against Nagash fought right here, as weight to their location.
And Kessler feels something. A connection.
Yeah, a sense of destiny. Being drawn specifically to Drunga Uzkul, the valley where Zahaak was defeated centuries ago. Like, he belongs there somehow.
But the bandits catch up again. Ambush.
They try. But this time, fate intervenes brutally. Just as the bandits spring their trap, orcs attack.
Orcs?
Yeah, Urgul, the orc warlord, and his greenskins. They crash the party, the bandits become the ambushed. Chaos, bloody reversal of fortune, shows how wild and unpredictable the mountains are.
So now they have orcs chasing them, led by Urgul.
Exactly. Skinner uses his knowledge of the terrain, leads them on this difficult, winding route. Trying to shake off the orcs, it's a desperate chase.
And during a watch, Raban meets someone. A messenger.
A cryptic figure.
Yeah.
Claims to be from Count Akim of Averland. Delivers a dire warning. Zahaak is heading for Wissenberg, the capital. Tells the Baron to abandon the quest, return immediately.
More intrigue. Is the message real? Is Akim trying to manipulate them?
Raises a lot of questions. Can they trust this? What are Akim's real motives?
Back in Wissenland, Lord Hugo and the Knights of the Griffin arrive to help Eberfeld.
Yes, in Bergdorf. Eberfeld finally accepts their aid, recognizing the gravity of the situation. A fragile alliance, but a glimmer of hope.
They march to help Newwald, which is under siege.
Right. General Hawk's forces are struggling there, fighting undead in thick fog. Lord Hugo leads a charge into the mist. Brave move.
What do they find?
Something horrifying. They're fighting undead knights. Former knights of the Southern Sword, twisted, corrupted, bearing the ghoul star of Neakara.
No, the same order Armin led, corrupted by the enemy.
Exactly. A devastating reveal. Shows the corrupting power of Nagash, the tragic fate awaiting even noble warriors.
All that horror unfolds. What's happening with the bandits? The ones who had the Runefang.
Infighting. Baldur is outraged by Rambrecht's cruelty to a prisoner. He mutinies, they fight, Baldur kills Rambrecht, and Baldur takes the Runefang of Solent for himself.
So the Runefang is still out there, just changed hands among thieves.
Pretty much. Adds another layer of complication. Meanwhile, the Baron's group is still navigating the mountains. Scanner finds more traps, goblin traps, hidden pits, snares, cleverly concealed, a reminder of the constant lurking dangers.
And eventually they get captured by the orcs. Kessler, Waldner, Scanner.
Yes. Overwhelmed by Urgul's warband looks grim. But Stanner, even as a prisoner, spots something. A concealed entrance in the cliff face. Looks like an old dwarf war crypt.
A possible escape. Or maybe where the artifact is.
Both are possibilities. Back with the others, more tension. Raban attacks Theodo. Eugen sides with Raban.
But Kessler steps in.
He does. Defends the halfling. Creates an even deeper rift. This shows how pressure frays loyalties.
They reach the war crypt entrance Skinner spotted.
Yes. Ancient dwarf stonework, but defaced with crude goblin graffiti. And Kessler feels it again, that overwhelming sense of belonging. Purpose. Like he's meant to be here.
But they're not safe yet. Attacked again.
Suddenly, terrifyingly, a massive hydra erupts from a fissure above the entrance. Multi-headed beast, chaos, panic, men snatched up, falling into goblin traps. It's a nightmare.
Who fights the Hydra?
Grum, the ogre, displays incredible heroism, throws himself at it, endures its fiery breath, grapples with its necks, buys time for the others, pure loyalty and courage.
But the orcs arrive right after. Urgul's horde.
Hot on their heels, surging onto the plateau, bloodlust in their eyes. Kessler just snaps, charges furiously into the green tide, great sword flashing.
A desperate last stand. Feldner tries to rally them.
He does, but they're being pushed back right to the edge of the plateau. Looks hopeless.
And then, betrayal.
The knight knocks Anselm out cold, finds a small escape route in the damaged crypt doorway, and just abandons them, saves himself. Cowardice shattering any last bit of unity.
What about Theodo?
The halfling shows amazing bravery, defends the wounded Grum, uses his bow, then his dagger against swarming goblins, but he's overwhelmed, dragged down. Looks like the end for him.
Grum sees this.
He does, and rises in this earth-shattering rage, ignores his wounds, just crushes the goblins attacking Theodo. Pure fury and revenge, driven by grief for his friend.
So some make it inside the crypt.
A few. Skinner immediately warns them more traps inside, dwarf defenses. They navigate carefully. Spear traps, poison darts, collapsing floors, incendiary fungus, deadly stuff.
What's inside the crypt? Treasure.
Desecration, shattered dwarf skeletons everywhere, but no treasure. Orcs just destroyed everything in a fury, defiled a sacred place.
But amidst the ruin, Kessler sees something. An orc throne.
Yeah, crudely made from a dwarf king's casket. And lying nearby, a glint of steel. A runefang. It seems like they found it.
Finally. But more betrayal.
Always. Otmar and some other mercenaries reveal they're working for Baldur, the bandit who killed Rambrecht. They turn on Raban and Anselm. Kessler grabs his greatsword again. More fighting.
Unbelievable. Constant conflict. Okay, let's jump back to the siege. Dordrecht. General Hawk.
Right. Hawk and Baron von Schlafen are preparing for Zahaak's arrival, building defenses, clearing fire zones. Hawk even demolishes the new part of town. Ruthless pragmatism.
And Hawk uses a warlock, Albrecht, to create magical frost.
A desperate gamble. Highlights the Empire's willingness to use volatile magic. It's controversial, dangerous.
And then Zahaak himself appears before the walls.
Zahaak the Worm, terrifying presence, shrugs off a cannonball hit, and spectral figures emerge from his legion banshees. Their wails bring despair, shows the power Zahaak commands.
What do the banshees do?
Attack Albrecht the Warlock. Their touch drains his life, his frost spell fails instantly, shows the danger of relying on that kind of magic against these foes.
And Hawk gets compelled to stab himself, but survives.
A really weird, chilling moment. Seems like Zahaak's influence. He stabs himself, but inexplicably doesn't die. Leaves him wounded, bewildered. Suggests some deeper, maybe magical connection or purpose.
The undead are crossing the bridges into the city.
Pouring across, Hawk makes the agonizing call, destroy the bridges. Sacrifice parts of Dordrecht to try and halt the advance.
Does it work?
Not entirely. A net full of zombies gets launched over the walls, a new threat inside the defenses. Relentless, adaptable enemy.
Okay, back to the crypt. Waldner confronts Rambrecht's killer.
No, Waldner confronts Rambrecht himself. Sorry, I misspoke earlier. It's Rambrecht who Baldur mutinied against. But Waldner catches up to Rambrecht in the crypt. He gets his vengeance for his brother's death, kills Rambrecht, and takes the Runefang of Solland.
Ah, okay. So Waldner gets the Runefang, and Kessler and Skinner fight an undead orc.
Gordreg, an orc wight. Fierce fight. Kessler finally destroys it, but they're exhausted.
And then the crypt starts collapsing. A magical storm.
Exactly. Stones cracking, winds howling with bone shards. Forces them into a desperate escape.
Orcs are still chasing them.
Urgel's remaining orcs catch up as they reach the trapped area again. Raban, Skinner, Kessler make a stand.
And Theodo, he reappears.
Yes. In a final, seemingly suicidal act of bravery, opens inner doors, taunts Urgel, waves the Runefang, trying to draw the orc away, buy time for the others.
Does it work? Does he survive?
It seems like a sacrifice. Skinner watches, respects the halfling's courage even as they realize the Runefang is lost to them again, drawn into the collapsing crypt with Urgel and presumably Theodo.
Lost again.
Wow.
And Ernst reveals his backstory during the retreat.
Yes. His connection to Rabwald, why he became a mercenary, abandoning his noble life, adds tragedy to his character.
Kessler is despairing now. Feels they failed.
He does. Thinks it was all for nothing. But Skinner, even wounded, notices something in the carvings they saw earlier. A crucial detail.
What is it?
The artifact wasn't a Runefang, it was the Zonbinzahn, the Sun Tooth.
Sun Tooth, what is that?
A powerful war rune, not a sword, a talisman, crafted by Alaric the Mad ages ago for a dwarf king, Eisen Fallowbeard, specifically to enhance his axe against Zahaak in that first war.
So, not a Runefang, but something else entirely, something maybe even more potent.
Exactly, an elder rune. Immensely significant magic. A direct link to that ancient conflict, and potentially the key to defeating Zahaak now.
But Urgel catches up to Kessler for a final fight.
He does. Brutal confrontation. Just as Urgel seems to have the upper hand, Grum appears.
Grum survived.
Wounded, but driven by loyalty and rage, he attacks Urgel in a final decisive blow, crushes the orc warlord, ends the orc threat.
Grum's loyalty is incredible, but Skanir is dying.
Yes. His last words are a request to Kessler, tell his clan how he died and where they found Ironclaw's sword in the crypt, a dwarf's final duty.
Waldner urges Kessler to take the Sun Tooth to Eberfeld.
He does, recognizes its importance, their last hope. Even the mercenary sees the bigger picture now.
And Theodo, did he actually die?
Surprisingly, no. He reappears, makes a typical dark joke. And Grum, wounded but alive, stays loyal to Kessler. An unlikely trio survives.
So Kessler has the Sun Tooth. Back in Wissenberg, Father Vadian is doing divination.
Using a pendulum, trying to locate Zahaak for Count Eberfeld.
Does he find him?
Yes, but he also gives a warning. Don't attack immediately. Speak with a guest first. A mysterious guest who has just arrived.
Another unknown factor. Adds more tension.
Exactly. And the Wissenland army marches out, gray and white uniforms, advancing on Wissenberg for the final showdown.
But it's a sacrifice. The infantry engaged Zahaak's main force in the fog.
A courageous, probably suicidal move, a calculated sacrifice. To buy Eberfeld time, Time to hopefully use the Sun Tooth, this ancient rune, to destroy Zahaak himself.
The fate of Wissenland hangs in the balance. Incredible climax building.
Absolutely. And thinking back on the whole story, those themes really stand out, don't they? Honor, for instance.
Yeah, you see it in so many different ways. Eugen's knightly honor, which turns out hollow, leading to betrayal.
Right. Contrasted with Waldner's mercenary code, which evolves into personal honor, seeking vengeance, and Skennier's dwarfish honor duty to ancestors, tradition.
All very different. And then there's the decay.
Pervasive. Physically, you see it in the undead, the rundown tavern, the ruined village, constant reminders of the world eroding.
But morally too, right? The greed, the betrayal, the desperation, it mirrors the bigger picture of the Warhammer world's decline.
Exactly, and that ties into duty. Armin's duty to his order leads him to die bravely. Waldner struggles with duty to his men versus a larger duty, Ernst's conflicted loyalties.
Kessler's duty evolves, doesn't it? From just guarding the Baron to protecting Karlinda, to maybe seeing the mission through for its own sake.
It does, and Eberfeld carries the ultimate burden duty to his entire province, forcing those agonizing choices and sacrifices. The whole story is driven by these acts of duty, heroic and heartbreaking.
So as our deep dive into Runefang wraps up, we followed this desperate quest for an artifact that turned out to be something else entirely.
The Zonbinzahn, the Sun Tooth, witnessed brutal battles, heavy losses, and now this ancient rune is Wissenland's last precarious hope.
It really leaves you thinking, in a world this dark, this unforgiving, what does being a hero actually mean?
That's the question, isn't it? Was losing the Runefang of Solland, twice even, a necessary sacrifice? Did fate guide them to the Sun Tooth instead?
And what happens now? What fate awaits Wissenland as Eberfeld faces Zahaak, armed with this ancient power? So many unknowns.
Powerful questions to ponder. Leaves you wanting to know what happens next.
Definitely. Join us next time on the deep dive as we plunge into another shadowed corner of the Warhammer universe. Maybe a different faction, maybe another powerful artifact. Who knows?
Until then, keep your wits sharp.
And may your courage never fail.
Indeed. Stay tuned.